All right, it's been long enough now. I think I can tell you what my favorite portable HF antenna is, and maybe it's no surprise. I have quite a lot of these 17-foot and 25-foot telescoping vertical whips because the vertical whip is my favorite antenna. There, I said it. I want to explain why, because there are some pros, but there are a lot of cons. If you remember in our last video, we were talking about how you should think of an antenna as like a tool, and certain attributes of an antenna make your job easier of activating, and it can make it harder in some cases. Even though you may have the best performing antenna, the most efficient, the most resonant antenna, you're getting all that power down your coax and into the elements, and it's going everywhere you want it to be. It could be a royal pain in the behind to set up, so that's a compromise, particularly if you're a portable operator, and this antenna is obviously portable focused. Now, to help make this video useful, I'm going to cover the pros up front and then the cons. I'm going to start out with the biggest pro for me is that these antennas have a low takeoff angle. A low takeoff angle, well, why don't I just explain it over here? What the heck am I talking about? So this is the ground, right? We've got a ground line here that's just chilling. And we're going to add a vertical antenna to that. So on a tripod, spike in the ground, doesn't really matter, right? So we're going to have just a long vertical line. We'll assume that this is 1/4 wavelength of the frequency we want to operate on, right? That's what we're aiming to do. I'm going to have a radiation pattern that is a bit unique. It's going to be different than like a ground-mounted dipole or an end-fed that's like a sloper end-fed or something along those lines. So what you're going to see as far as the propagation pattern of an antenna like this is you're going to get all of this area out here is a big bubble, and then it's going to kind of go like that on both sides. And it's going to come over and like that on both sides all the way back in. So something like that. And then all this area here is your power, your effective power you're getting out. Well, the thing to keep in mind for low takeoff angle is that it is radiating on all sides perpendicular to the antenna as much as it can. All kinds of different angles of RF radiated power are going to be coming out of this at all kinds of different directions and different takeoff angles. And the advantage of a vertical antenna is that you're going to get a lot of this lower takeoff that you can see here. This low takeoff angle is what you want when it comes to this long distance communication, because it's going to hit the end of the Earth, or at least when the Earth starts to curve, your RF is going to continue to shoot across, eventually hitting the atmosphere and then bouncing back down. And this is what gives you beyond line of sight communication. This is incredibly valuable for HF propagation. It's basically what allowed me to do a decent job once the bands came back in line from Hawaii. And it's what gives me QRP capability for some pretty impressive long distance contact. So if we were looking at a vertical antenna just straight down the tippity top of it, so this is the very tip, the radiation pattern would just be 360 degrees of RF going in all directions. And so your RF is transmitting out at every possible direction from the antenna if you're looking top down. From its vertical standpoint though, just keep in mind that the degree at which the RF is coming out at the angle is the thing that you really want if you're looking for long distance contacts. If you're doing a portable activation for parks on the air, then having a low takeoff angle is often very, very good, so you get more chances to get more people. Now to bring this home, this is a dipole at 1/4 wavelength on each side, whichever frequency you're trying to operate on. And then you'll have some kind of a connector in the middle, right, that brings coax connection to it, and then you've got your radio over here, right? So to be as effective with low takeoff angle, the height of the horizontal dipole needs to be equal to that of the total length, right? So whatever this is in total length, you will need that height above ground to give it the same takeoff angles that you get off of a vertical. So it's easier often to use a vertical antenna to get those low takeoff angles than it is to use a horizontal antenna in portable applications, because you generally will need a tree, you'll need something to get all of these things aloft, which can be more difficult depending on where you're at. And again, horizontal antennas, right, they usually need some kind of a support or something like that in the middle here to make sure that you're able to keep this aloft, which is why you often see inverted V's and inverted L's and just sloper antennas that go from the low point all the way up into a tree, etc. But even then, those will not perform with the same low takeoff angle as a vertical will, just by its very nature of standing up out in a field. And just so we cover all the bases here, these are two identical antennas. One has a more acute angle for the inverted V and one is a more wide angle. They're both 1/2 wavelength above ground though, right? So you're going to get the best takeoff angles at least, you know, that whole thing. The general rule is that the more wide the angle, the more obtuse, the more above 90, this antenna is going to get better low takeoff angles than the more acute antenna. Right? So just keep that in mind. If you can get these greater than 90 degrees wide with the inverted V, this is going to get better takeoff angles. But consider that 1/2 wavelength can often be difficult for these type of antennas. You will need some kind of a center connector that will allow you to be able to do that. And then, of course, whatever insulators and line you use on the end is going to also play a factor in how wide this whole structure is going to become to be able to get low takeoff angles, which, again, if you're going for long distance, this is what you want. You want that low takeoff angle. Second, these are freestanding antennas, meaning you can use a tripod or a spike. In most cases, a tripod works really, really well. You won't be offending park rangers by putting something into a tree, or a spike in some cases can draw people's ire, but most of the time it's in the ground by the time anybody sees it, so it's not a big deal. Another pro is ease of assembly and setup. These vertical antennas only need something as simple as a vice grip antenna mount. You screw it onto the end of it, and you can clamp your radial wires underneath the jaws, or you can have a more elaborate setup for your radial system if you want to do that. This keeps this pretty inexpensive. If you wait towards the end of the video, I'll talk about how you can get set up relatively inexpensive with a really well-performing antenna for portable use. Speaking of tripods, there's two that I primarily go to. It's the small packable carbon fiber tripod that Chameleon Antenna makes. It already has the threaded connector for the tripod, and I add the little CHA blank to it. I can add a coax connection to it to be able to do my antenna things with. I also like the Surveyor's tripods. These things are super, super beefy. If you're in a windy environment, you can extend the legs and then lie it completely flat on the ground, and it is not going to move. It has worked really, really well. Even at the beach, I've had no problem with it. I use a spike occasionally, but most of the times I want to bring a spike with me. A tripod's going to probably work better in a lot of cases, although there are tons of reasons and tons of locations in the US and around the world where the spike makes more sense. Obviously, don't try and fly on a plane with the spike. You will get it taken away from you. You can just trust me on that one. Now, this goes in the pro and the con territory, and this will be the transition of the video. These are adjustable antennas, meaning you are going to extend out all the elements you need to be resonant on the frequency that your radio is transmitting on. And you must do that manually. Go in here and adjust it. Either use... Pretty close, pretty close. I eyeballed it on the high side of the band. Too long. No, almost. That's it. We got it. Either using the S meter, the SWR meter on your radio, or using an antenna analyzer like this Rig Expert stick. These are available pretty much everywhere. I get 10% off if you use the code JOSH at Gigaparts. Pretty much all of the analyzers are available there if you are so inclined. I really like the Stick Pro. This is I think this is the Stick 500. The Stick Pro, which is a little bit more expensive, does some more things that you might find valuable when you're using these type of antennas. So remarkably useful in the sense that you're adjusting exactly where it needs to be, so you know that you're putting out as much power as you can, assuming all things being equal with other antennas. This means that there is a con if you want to change bands, you will physically have to go and readjust your antenna. And if you're trying to get into the 40 meter space, then you're likely going to have to add a coil to the base of this, as the vertical elements for a 40 meter quarter wave vertical is pretty intense. They're very, very long. I think the only one I know of right now that exists on the market is Alpha Antenna has one, and it actually has a guy ring that's like permanently attached that you add guys to hold this thing up, because at the length needed, it's really, really tall. And in that same vein, coming into the cons, you have to manually tune these, physically tune them. And that can be a little daunting for people that are brand new at this. You're going to adjust this, I say about 6 inches. So if you're doing 20 meters, you're going to go all the way out with a 17-foot whip. You're going to just extend it all the way, and you're likely going to have to bring it in a smidge. And with the 25-footer, you're going to give it pretty much all of the elements except for like the bottom 3. And then you're going to use something like an analyzer to test where that salad bowl dip is. But I'm showing the video.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were showing me.
No, I am. You're next. And you want that salad bowl, the lowest part of that bowl, to be right on the frequency you're transmitting on, and you would use an analyzer to do that. Analyzers make it really slick because that salad bowl is going to move left or right as you are physically lengthening or shortening the antenna. If it's moving to the right, the dip is moving to the right, that means the antenna is too short for your desired transmit frequency. And if it's moving to the antenna is too long. And so I'll go in and I'll just take in 6 inches until I find about the match I'm looking for, and that's usually good enough in most applications for operating. The second con is it's actually kind of bulky to use these antennas. This is my 25-foot whip. I use this almost exclusively. 25 feet is exactly what I need in California for another con I'll talk about shortly. And here is the antenna connection for my coax. Here is all my radials in a stuff sack, and my micro tripod is all baked into this Dyneema bag. And this is great, this is all I need, but for some of you, that's like already too heavy, and this is probably close to 5 pounds or so. I could probably lighten this up. A mini con for arid environments. I live in California, which we pump a lot of water in, but it doesn't change the fact that this is a desert, and we don't have a very conductive soil base. Our ground is just not the same as the ground that you'd get if you go past the Mississippi heading east, right? So what I've found is that a 17-foot whip, although smaller and thinner, so you can see, let's do Spaceball 1 pass here for length. Although the 17-footer is not much shorter, it is thinner in diameter, and it's also lighter. So I end up having to go with the 25 because when I fully extend the 17-foot whip, I don't get all of 20 meters. My salad bowl is a little bit towards the high side. It's way up into the single sideband, and I can't add extra length without clipping on a piece of wire or doing some kind of weird stuff to get all the way down to the low side of the band where like FT8 is in Morse code. So I always go with the 25-footer, which gives me way more elements than I need. So it's heavier, I'm carrying around, it's a little bit bulky. There isn't a sweet spot. Like if this was an 18 or 19-footer, this would be golden, and I'd be set for 20 meters all the way up through 2 meters for transmitting on whatever frequency within that space I wanted. Now, I'm not sure where to put this. Let's just leave it as the con for right now, is cost. I think that in comparison to like a home-built wire antenna, these vertical antennas are going to be more expensive because you can't really home build these elements, right? But then you have things like a spool antenna, which they go for over $100. So yeah, I don't think it's that much more expensive. You're looking at about $85 if you're getting the Chameleon 25. You can find them less expensive through other retailers. The 17-footer is going to be more like $60, and I've seen these as low as $45, depending on where you get them. Again, Gigaparts is going to be a really good source for a lot of this stuff. They pretty much have everything. You can check that out. So that's your whip, right? So that's just the beginning part of it. You also need something to connect it to, and here's a C-clamp. The whip goes in here, coax goes in the bottom, and then there's this nice little Flugelness wing nut that you can attach radials to. Now, topic of radials. Radials are required for this antenna. It's a quarter wavelength vertical, meaning you're putting 1/4 wavelength of the frequency you're transmitting on into the sky in the form of it being a whip. So you're going to need wire underneath it to be the other side of the antenna. And I'll just tell you what my recommendation is. It's 4 bundles of 4 12-foot wires. You can go pretty small gauge, like 23, 26 gauge should be fine. If you want to plus this up to like 18, that's fine. Most kits will give you like 4 12-foot wires, and you just kind of spread those out on the ground, and you're good to go. If you want to add more wires, that's where I would say go with the 4 4-foot bundles. The 4 12-foot bundles of 4 wires each. Now, if you wanted to take that a step further, you don't have to have them 12 feet. You could cut those in half, and now you have 6 foot elements for these radials, and you can bundle those up into groups of 4, groups of 3, groups of whatever, and then attach those to the bottom somehow. In most situations, you'll find that these clamps are using the 3/8 by 24 thread pitch mounts into an SO239. And the secret sauce here is there's a nylon bushing that is separating the center pin on the SO239 connecting to the whip to then the metal body of the coax connector, the threaded bit, and then the actual clamp, which you would then connect wires to for the radials. So it truly is separating the center pin over to the whip and the other side to the shield. That's going to be your most important part of this whole thing, aside from the elements here, is that you can isolate the pin from the ground side of the antenna, right? So keep that in mind. Radials can be a bit tricky if you're in a park and it's super well trafficked and there's people all over the place, and having a bunch of wires on the ground is going to be the most detrimental side of this antenna setup. I have found in my experience that if you set up a vertical like this, people will show up. They will show up and they'll talk to you. So you do have to keep in mind that their radial wires probably need to be brightly colored and set up in such a way that you're not just creating like a trip hazard, right? At the same time, you can get pretty creative and you can use quick pull-out connectors like those flat spade connectors, those automotive connectors that will just pull away if someone trips on it or catches their foot or something like that. So that's a really easy way to go. People have also used power pole connectors that, again, will just pull apart when someone walks over them, gets their foot caught, or whatever. Generally, wire antennas, in comparison, you might have a low part, a low bit. You have to get around this, that, or the other structure. Or if you're doing just a long sloper up into a tree. You see my antenna? A little bit there. And then to that. Soda Beams Hybrid Mini, or no, Super 6 or something like that. Yeah. And back along this tree, and there you go. Here's the live stream set. Heck yeah. There's inevitably some part of it that somebody could clothesline themselves on. So all things said and done, I generally like the radials better than having a clothesline thing with the wire, but that's just more or less where I end up activating in the kind of user spaces I'm at with all the people around all over the place. All right, so cost. Cost is a major thing to consider. Well, you can get an Intellatron branded 17-foot vertical whip like this for $60 over on the Gigaparts website. And again, I think you get 10% off of that if you use the code Josh. There is a $30 CB clamp that you can use that has a hole about the right size for the 3/8 by 24 connector for the SO239. And these little threaded connectors are about $10 on Amazon. So that's about $100 for the whip, the mount, the clamp, the connector, and then you will have to supply a piece of coax, whatever you prefer, and then make your own radials. You can totally do this. It's very cheap and inexpensive. You can go grab just about any number of wires that you have around the shop, hook them up with connectors, crimp them together, and you can use those. It'll be totally fine. Again, you're aiming for about 4 12-foot wires, and if you want to get real crazy, you'll get 4 bundles of 4 12-foot wires, right? And if you want to cut those down into 6-foot bundles, you can do that too. Sky's the limit, go nuts. It's about the total wire underneath the antenna, so having lots of shorter wires is actually really effective. Final tip, EMP cloth. This is like adding a hat on a hat, gilding the lily, adding a nice pat of butter on a steak. So an EMP cloth is actually a very effective radial solution as well. You can pick these up for $10 to $20 on Amazon. They come in lengths of, I think it's 48 inches by like 118 inches. So it's about the width of a bolt of cloth, and then you pick the length. It comes in various different lengths. So you can just use this as the radial. And how you do that is you lay it out. I like to use cornhole bags, like the throw markers, on each corner to weigh it down. And then I'll just take a pair of jumpers, 2 alligator clips connected connected via wire, and I'll clip onto the shield side of the coax somehow via the connector, the vice grip, the clamp, whatever, and then I'll just clip it to the body of the EMP cloth. And that's pretty much all you have to do. But gilding the lily even further is if you add your radial spread over the top of the EMP cloth. Now you've really got yourself a fantastic radial network underneath that antenna, and it will really, really perform well. So highly recommend you try out EMP cloth if you have not. It is actually very effective. And I've done operations and made contacts where I only used a big old piece of EMP cloth and no radials, and it works fine. The only issues you're going to find with EMP cloth is that as you get lower into the frequency space, so 20 meters is a little bit of this, 30 meters and 40 meters and on down, the EMP cloth doesn't provide enough radial space, enough surface area for what it needs to do. So you will often need to add radials on top of this to get even better efficiency out of your antenna. So keep that in mind. EMP cloth will do a lot, but it's not always the best for low frequencies. You should still add those radial wires. Future editing Josh here. I realized there was a couple of things I forgot to put a bow on. So long video, longer. I wanted to make a couple of points. First, I don't know how these will do through TSA, specifically the 25-footer and 17-footer, much lighter. But I got stopped LAX TSA with this. They said that this side in particular is a weapon. I could kind of see it. So you may want to check these. Check these before you wreck these, right? So keep that in mind. Second, this is obviously a portable antenna. Sure, you can set it up in a permanent type of configuration, but it's really meant to be portable, right? That's the idea of the video. But what if you did want a permanent vertical antenna for the reasons I kind of already mentioned? Low takeoff angle, not too difficult to set up. Well, I got news for you. Go check out a website, dxcommander.com. It will be linked in the video description. These are also available at DX Engineering. It is a permanent vertical antenna, multi-band vertical, that you don't have to adjust. You build it once, you cut those wires to resonance, and then you're set. You do need a radial spread underneath it, so just keep that in mind. But good news, grass will overtake the wires over time, and you can actually help them out a little bit by kind of trenching them and pushing them in the dirt a little bit. Highly recommended you check out DX Commander, okay? Highly recommended. And lastly, before the wrap up, yes, I like wire antennas. I like them just fine. I'm giving you my favorite portable antenna. Not the one I will take every time I'm portable. Not the best antenna. Not the most efficient antenna. My favorite. Those are different words. I hope you understand. Thanks for watching my video, my favorite portable antenna, the Vertical Whip. I will leave all kinds of links in the video description because I have tried out a ton of these, a ton of different mounting options, all kinds of different accessories. So I think you'll have a good experience with it, assuming you tune it. You gotta tune it. So Nano VNA would be great in this case. If you've been looking to get a Nano VNA and don't want to drop a couple hundred on an analyzer, this is the perfect time to do that. I'll have a link for you as well in the video descriptions. Thanks so much for the support. I am Josh KI6NAZ73. Future editing Josh here. I realize there's a couple of things I didn't complete. Literally. Of course, didn't silence my phone. Forgot to do that too.